transition back to the NFL, and let's talk about an AFC East battle between the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are favored by 7 points. It's an 8:15 kickoff Saturday night in Buffalo. The over-under for this game is 43.5 points. It is going to snow Saturday in Buffalo. So Bills head coach Sean McDermott and Tua Tagovailoa spoke about this earlier this week. Check it out.
I mean, they're going to be in the same conditions we're in. It's not like every day we're out playing in 6 inches of snow around here, So I think perceptually people get this perception of that we go out and practice in the snow every day. But we're just, like I said, working on being focused and improving as a team.
Have you seen snow before?
Yeah, it snowed in Alabama my first year. Yeah. So it snows in Alabama, guys. I know. I mean, people don't know that, There's some people that just think, it just gets cold in Alabama. It does snow.
That was Bills head coach Sean McDermott and Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. So when I look at this matchup between the Dolphins and the Bills, these two teams already played against each other this year. You got to go back to week 3. The Dolphins beat the Bills in Miami 21-19. But in that game, if you look at the stat sheet, the Bills won every major statistical category in that game. The Bills had more first downs than the Dolphins. The Bills had more rushing yards than the Dolphins. The Bills had more passing yards than the Dolphins. Total yards, the Bills had more than the Dolphins did. So I was shocked at how the Dolphins were able to pull that game off in week 3. But the Dolphins, they won that game, and they started off the season very impressive. They started off the season 3-0 until that Thursday night matchup lost to the Bengals in Cincy. That was the game where Tua had the concussion, even though we all knew that Tua was concussed the week before that. But when I look at this matchup, I'm looking at Tua Tagovailoa for the Miami Dolphins because Tua started off the season very, very, very well. But in the last 2 games, he hasn't been very good. Let's look at Tua and what he's done in the first 9 games of the season compared to the last 2 games. In the first 9 games of the season, Tua completed 70% of his passes. In the last 2 games, he's completed 46% of his passes. His yards per pass attempt in the first 9 games of the season were 9. In the last 2 games, they're 7.2. His touchdown to interception ratio in the first 9 games were 19-3. In the last 2 games, they are 3-2. His passer rating in the first 9 games were 115.7, and in the last 2 games is 73.1. So Tua has not been impressive in his last 2 games against the 49ers and against the Chargers. And I think the Chargers, Ronaldo Hill, the defensive coordinator for the Chargers, I think he put out the right blueprint on how you stop this Dolphins offense. We know offensively they have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That's the best receiver tandem in the NFL. Both already have over 1,000 yards receiving this year. Tyreek Hill is an MVP candidate, and he's had a major, major impact on the Miami Dolphins football team this year. But they weren't able to get into a great rhythm against that Chargers defense Sunday night in LA. They really, really struggled. And Tua specifically struggled. And that's the biggest question about this Dolphins offense right now. Can Tua elevate his game for the Dolphins to be contenders in the AFC? Because when you get to the playoffs, everybody's good. And you're going to be going up against opposing quarterbacks, the likes of Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. So Tua is going to be expected to play at a high level for this Dolphins football team. He has to elevate his game and at least be able to improvise when things go wrong. That's what makes a quarterback great. When you can improvise and use your athleticism, use your intellect as a quarterback and make things happen. That's what makes you great as a quarterback. And that's something that Tua has not been able to do in these last two games. We know Mike McDaniel replacing Brian Flores has definitely helped Tua progression as a quarterback overall. Tua has progressed this year significantly, and it surprised me. But in these last two games, Tua has struggled. He has struggled. At one point last week against the Chargers, Tua was 3 of 17 for 25 passing yards. 3 of 17 for 25 passing yards, ladies and gentlemen. He was pathetic at one point in that game. His completion percentage was terrible last week against the Chargers. The man completed 36% of his passes last week, 10 of 28. He's terrible. So we got to find out what Tua is made of. But here's the thing. Tua in this matchup is going to be playing in inclement weather. So the Miami Dolphins are playing against the Buffalo Bills and the weather. This is Tua in his career when the kickoff temperature is below 50 degrees. He's 0-3, and he has 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Now, overall, for the Miami Dolphins in their last 7 games, when the temperature is below 40, they are 0-7. They average 17 points per game, only 86 rushing yards per game, and they give up opposing teams' rushing yards per game 141. So not only is it just Tua who struggles in the cold, it's the Miami Dolphins football team overall. And I thought this was interesting. Last week in LA, when the temperature was 55 degrees, the Dolphins had heaters near their bench inside SoFi Stadium. Ain't that crazy? It's 55 degrees, and they got heaters on their bench. So what do you think is going to happen this weekend in Buffalo? They're going to struggle. It's going to be a struggle for the Miami Dolphins. And this is playing right into the hands of the Buffalo Bills. They love playing in this type of weather. They love it. Seriously. So Miami, even at 8-5 right now, I'm not sure the Miami Dolphins are going to make the playoffs. Their remaining schedule is they're in Buffalo Saturday night, and then they're home against the Packers in week 16. That's a game that they could possibly lose, depending on which Packer team shows up. Week 17, they're in New England, and then week 18, they're home against the Jets. If you want to be a playoff contender, if you want to be a contender in the AFC East, if you're the Miami Dolphins, you got to be able to beat the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo in December. You got to be able to beat the New England Patriots in Foxborough in December. Otherwise, you're a front runner. So I want to know which Dolphins team is going to show up. Now, when I look at the Buffalo Bills, obviously, offensively, it starts and ends with Josh Allen. Josh Allen for the season, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 3,553 passing yards. He's completed 64% of his passes. We all know that Josh Allen is one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. He's in the MVP conversation, but he's not a top 3 candidate for me because of all the interceptions that he threw in the middle part of the season. But it's still Josh Allen. It's still Josh Allen, and we know that he's an elite quarterback. But it's interesting when you look at his numbers. This is since beating the Chiefs in week 6. His passer rating is 81. That's ranked 28th in the NFL. He has 9 turnovers. That's the second most in the NFL. His completion percentage is 61. That's ranked 30th in the NFL. Yards per pass attempt, 6.8. That's ranked 22nd in the NFL. 225 passing yards per game. That's ranked 16th in the NFL. 9 touchdowns, which is tied for 14th in the NFL. And his passer rating is only ahead of Matt Ryan, Kenny Pickett, David Mills, and Russell Wilson. So, yes, he's in the MVP conversation because he's Josh Allen, but he hasn't been very impressive since week 6 against the Chiefs. He hasn't been very impressive. Now, we know offensively the Buffalo Bills have one of the best offenses in the NFL. They got Stephon Diggs. They got Gabriel Davis. They got Dawson Knox at tight end. They got Isaiah McKenzie as well at receiver. At running back, you got Devin Singletary. You got James Cook, the brother of Dalvin Cook, the running back for the Minnesota Vikings. So we know that they're a high-powered offense. But I believe in this game, it's going to come down to that Bills defense who don't have Von Miller. Von Miller is out for the season with an ACL injury. It's going to come down to that Bills defense. And we saw what they were able to do last week against Mike White and the New York Jets. Mike White had to go to the hospital after that game. They sacked Mike White 4 times last week. They got to Mike White 4 times last week in that game. So that's what's going to be key. Defensively, the Bills, they give up 338 total yards per game. That's ranked 9th in the NFL. They only give up 100 yards rushing per game. That's ranked 4th in the NFL. And they only give up 17 points per game, which is ranked 2nd in the NFL. They're led by defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier. So you're going to have to throw the ball to beat the Buffalo Bills. Can Tua make the necessary plays for the Dolphins to snap a 2-game losing streak? I say no. So I'm going to roll with the Buffalo Bills to beat the Miami Dolphins in Buffalo. I'm going Bills 27, Dolphins 13. I think Tua struggles in this game, and I think Josh Allen puts on an MVP performance.